Hello.
Hello.
Hi. How are things?
Good. Thank you. So, me and you, by
Yeah,
the looks of it, at the
no,
moment.
I think a few of the others were saying that they'd be here. They'd be around.
Okay.
I think maybe we can have a little review of some things in the meantime. See where we are. Yeah? Just have
Yeah,
a
sure.
quick look. Actually, this one over here I want to talk about with others if they're around. It's a longer discussion about the map.ginger, the work that Daniel did.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about that hopefully soon. So obviously, I wanted to talk to others about the work you've done with the Windows testing. Can that be? Is there a way of, do you think, putting that into the template formula so that it can be there for others to use in other formulas?
I was thinking about that. I mean, it certainly can do. My only kind of query on that is, I don't know if we're getting a lot of stuff in the template formula which people eventually need to kind of remove, because
Right.
the fact is probably 90%, 95% of formulas are not going to be Windows.
Do you
But
think you think it's that many? I just want to see.
well, I mean, well, there's only two formulas which are Windows currently.
Yeah, but I have seen a few more are supposed to be supporting Windows. Meaning I've seen them configured for Windows. I know there's a.
Right.
Let's have a look. Let's look at things that are a bit more recent. All right, we're going to see a lot of these now, aren't we? So what we need to look for is, say, the YAML files. So
What I would rather like to see, and this is kind of the next step in that story, is adding the Windows configuration to SSF formula.
definitely. What I was planning to do is to compare to diff the two of the formulas that you have configured and just make sure
Yeah,
that I've understood the templating properly. I mean, they're pretty similar, aren't they?
they are. There is a difference in that one is at 3001 and the other is at 3000.
Right.
And that it's almost, I almost did that on purpose in a way, so that
Right.
we can look at the differences and see how it can be templated. And in addition to that, I mean, there's also a question of, do we actually test against the different salt versions?
Yeah, in fact, that's going to feed into another conversation I've got for later about the issues with the matrix right now in terms of updating the matrix. I had a conversation with Javier a few weeks back. Did I mention last time we were speaking about maybe just concentrating on the master images rather than anything, rather than the rest of them? Did I mention that in the last meeting?
Um,
No,
I don't think so.
I don't think we discussed it, did we? Because I wanted to discuss it with the wider group, really. So depending on what the conclusion of that discussion is, then we could decide which one from the Windows, or whether we use both. So is it possible to make is it possible to build one with a master, like the master branch for the Windows, or is that not
Oh,
possible?
oh right. Oh, okay. Well, there's no, the Bootstrap script for Windows doesn't install from master.
Right.
So I'm not
They,
saying it's obviously not impossible, because obviously the developers need to run from master, but it's not straightforward. And if I was to do that, I would need to basically script the install of dependencies and things like that. So
yeah.
yeah, it is something that crossed my mind.
Yeah.
And then saying that, there's talk of changing the bootstrap script, isn't there?
Yeah, to a
From
binary.
upstream. Yeah.
Yeah, to a binary, and so that will also possibly open that up. So depending on, like I said, the other conversation, we could decide what we want to do with the Windows as well. But it's good that we've got that comparison of the two, and the SSF formula should really be able to handle that as well in any case. But we need to work out how we want to go forward with this matrix in all the formulas. There's a few formulas here. There's quite a few formulas with Windows configured, as you see. I mean, I've seen about there's a good 10,
Okay.
15. So I mean,
Right. Fine.
it's
Well.
there. It's there as a concept, meaning if we did have that available in the template formula, obviously it would be just doing a dummy operation. But that if someone wants to, have that in their formula, then it'd be a lot easier for them. Yeah, because there's quite a few. I can see there's quite a few here. Something to consider.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's definitely something that I've thought about.
Okay.
And yeah, and the only concern that I had was that, yeah, just this thing about having things in there which the majority of people won't need and will basically have to rip out on first use.
Right. In terms of those, the command line switches that we're passing through to the script, one of the command line switches could be to remove the Windows CI.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, and that way we've still got the best of both, where those who do need it can keep it. And it's not, I mean, removing things from a formula that's been freshly forked isn't the most difficult thing, especially when it's the CI stuff.
It's not. I'm just thinking more of a kind of a more of a holistic approach to this, because yeah, there's more customization that people would need to do, and I'm just thinking, yeah, how can we do this holistically going forward?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there were thoughts of actually having multiple template formulas to make it a little easier to sort of pick a template formula that's closer to what you actually need, rather than one monolithic template formula which does too much. But it's an idea, and I think it would be an interesting thing, because just to bring Windows testing to the forefront a bit more, because what you've got there is really, really useful. When it was in the Vagrant side of things, then it was quite difficult to take advantage of. But GitHub Actions is so easy; it just makes sense to kind of make it easier for others as well, if possible. Yeah. Anyone else? Has anyone else joined so far? No one else is there.
No.
Okay, I'm just going to just try and quickly ping if anyone else is around. And okay, so right, the pre-commit. Again, I really want other people to appreciate what you've done here, so we could discuss it more. But just having a look at this again, the only thing I got stuck on, I'm not saying it doesn't work, I just haven't had a chance to look at it, is that last point that we had with regards to using this as a replacement for the current linting. It wasn't that I don't believe it won't do the job. I think what it was is when I looked through the linting, it was doing different things as well. For example, the white space removal at the end of lines and the other bits and pieces. Yeah,
yeah,
that's by default.
That is in the sample configuration, but I put it in more as a signpost to what is possible.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be there.
Yeah, I think there might be a couple. You're gone.
So if people actually don't want it in there, then yeah, we can remove it. But surely there's nobody would complain about having their trailing white space taken out. Surely.
I've actually got a use case, again, another thing I wanted to discuss today, where actually there are some files which are test files, as in comparing in inspect to see the output is correct, and they actually have trailing white space because that's what the templates are actually producing. That's not a very clear thing I've just said there. Let me just give an example of what I mean. I don't know if it's this formula here, but I'll explain what I mean. We had this, I mentioned this briefly a few meetings back, but it was this idea of having, so what's rendered by the templates is having those actually as comparison files. So if you opened up, if you ran this formula against, say, Debian 10, the actual main config file for Tomcat would actually look like this, once the tests run. Do you understand what I mean? So
yeah, I do understand.
Yeah, instead of comparing, just checking for that line and checking for that line, it's just giving the whole file laid out as it would be. And what's interesting,
Yeah.
Go on.
Well, the only thing I want to say about that is I'm more interested in kind of testing behavior.
All right,
behavior more
behavior.
than line by line.
Yeah, I understand. Meaning the way we're already doing it. Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that. I think what this was here is when I was reviewing a number of PRs, I had no idea of really quickly being able to see what's going to get produced by these changes to the template, and what issues are being like by some of the white spacing and all the other bits and pieces. What's actually happening? What does it look like? And I was just trying some things out with different formulas. So I did more than just the Tomcat formula. I did a number at the time, and it was quite interesting to see some of the glitches that were actually appearing in the actual rendered files. So some of those do have white spacing in different places, like as in trailing white space or lines just with white space. And it was just so that we understand what our formulas are actually doing. So I'm not saying it's either or. I'm saying this could be done additionally, where we feel there's a particular template or a particular file that needs to be produced in a very sort of rigid format that needs to be maintained. So these were just test ideas. I was trying things out. But like I said, some of them have ended up with white space. So those would be files that, as long as we can exclude them, so excluding files from the different checks with pre-commit is possible, right? Because I haven't checked it out.
It is, but it definitely is possible. But you would need, to be able to kind of reliably recognize those files. Or, I mean, you could even configure the pre-commit specifically for a formula, and you can exclude on regular expressions, that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. So as long as we
I mean, the only reason I put those in was more of a this is possible.
Yeah.
Not that we have to follow these. We have to do these. These fixes. And the interesting thing with the white space ones is that actually, when you run it locally, it fixes them for you.
Yes.
And they go straight into a commit. So on GitHub, you'll never see the let's call them errors or flaws. So this was just more of a kind of an example that we could do more of this kind of thing. But if for whatever reason we don't want to at this stage, then it's very easy to take those two fixes out.
Definitely.
And on top of that, then taking those white space out, the configuration basically replicates what is already done in Travis.
So effectively does everything that our current linters do and a bit more.
Yes.
Right.
But also just for like consistency and things, the versions, the way it works is the dependencies and the versions that are going to be the same on your local machine as would be in CI and just that kind of thing. And you can the versions are in the config file. So, maybe once a month or once every 3 months or whatever, you would update those versions if you wanted to.
Yeah.
And check that everything still works and then commit it. And everybody then would be working with the same versions, because that line length change that actually hasn't been being picked up in CI since the change. So
there's a reason for that, is because we're pinning to an older version of semantic release. That's probably holding back the conventional commits gem as well. So
but I don't think I don't think it is being held up.
It is here. You see, we're specifically setting the versions here, and these are the ones that are pulling in the gems because they're older versions. I
but if you look in a
if you look in actual a run, it's actually
in a run, you'll see that it's pulling version 9 of the.
Is it? It's pulling version 9, but it's not actually the line length is still being held back at 72. Yeah, is that the case?
Well, okay, I haven't tested it, but I was just looking at the version of the package which was being installed.
Okay, let me check.
In one of in a recent run, and I'm pretty sure it was this version 9 of config conventional.
Let's have a look. So,
I'm not saying this out of blame or anything like that. I'm just pointing out that actually
it should be doing it, but it's not. I'm looking. Where am I looking again now? I need to check.
Yeah, so it'll be at the npm not minus I.
It is coming. It's coming at 901. So it should really be allowing it to. So in that case, if I was to take. Okay, something to look at. I won't do it now because it'll take time.
But all I'm saying then, that kind of configuration is built into the pre-commit configuration. Yes. So everybody, we will know that what versions we're running at and things like that. So
yep.
And it will be consistent across every formula and at everybody's machine as well.
Yes.
Which can only, to me, it can only make sense.
Yes, definitely. I was just, when I did have a quick look at it earlier on, there were various plugins that were available here. Other ones, like, for example, for restructured text and stuff. Did you see some of those?
Yeah, if you
where's the actual?
It's at the top of the page. There's
Is it in the intro?
It's at the very top in the banner kind of thing of like examples of supported hooks. That's the page.
Yes, and I saw there's a few more that could be considered here.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just I didn't get around to putting everything in before getting some kind of feedback, really.
Yes. So we can go in steps. We don't have to do everything at once. But I thought the restructured text would be useful quite early because we do have quite a few formulas where I find I have to edit those files because of things not being done properly, like backticks and stuff not being doubled and stuff like that. So that would be very useful as well if we could pull that in at least. But otherwise, again, it would have been good if others were around so we could just confirm that we're happy to move forward with this and use this as our linters, as our lint stage, rather than having separate linters running.
Yeah, I agree. Just Javier has signed in. I'm not sure how recently.
Hi guys, just a few minutes, so catching up.
Yeah. Hi. Did you hear the bit about, or you've just joined in right now?
Just right now.
Okay, so we were talking about this pre-commit. David, do you want to explain just a brief summary of what the plan is here?
Well, so pre-commit is a Git hook package manager, I think is what it calls itself. So you configure all of your linters, syntax checkers, things like that into one configuration file, pinning versions and things like that. But then you install them as Git hooks. So whether you run this in CI or locally on your machine, it will do all of the checks and things automatically. And particularly on a local commit, it only checks the files which are actually in that commit. So obviously it's very fast to run, but then in CI you can run it across every file. And so, yeah, it just seems like the next sensible step, I thought, in what we were doing, which Imran set up all in Travis. So it's just kind of formalizing that. And also, and another advantage is that the hooks, you can hook into different stages in Git, and the most kind of useful one for us, there's actually a commit message checker. So this commit lint check can be done before the commit is even pushed to GitHub. So, you know, the sooner you know that there's a problem with a message, then obviously the sooner you can fix it.
It installs itself as a Git hook when you download the repo.
You need the package on your machine. So pip-in is Python package, and then when you clone a repo, you do have to run a script to actually install the hook. So, and again, so this is optional in a way. So if for whatever reason somebody actually doesn't want to run this locally, they don't have to. But yeah, once you've installed the hooks, they are automatically run when you do a commit or a push or whatever.
I like
and
it.
yeah, and Upstream and Salt have moved to using it at some point over the last, well, whatever, few months or 6 months or something. That's how they implement that black Python formatting style, which is now mandated.
Have you? Hello?
Yes. What?
Yeah. So have you come across this before, the pre-commit?
No, I've never saw it. I've used pre-commit hooks in my repos myself, but never came across this one. But I like it. It sounds interesting.
Yeah, actually, we had, if you go back in our log, we did have a good discussion. I had a discussion with someone in our where is it? Freenode.log. What is it again? Let's do. Yeah, and what I was going to say is there was one issue. If you've got an old Ruby environment sitting around, as I mentioned to David, I had a problem when I was trying to install the pre-commits. When I tried to run pre-commit install, I ended up with some errors. I wrote that down somewhere, didn't I? I mentioned that.
It was in a private message, yeah.
Oh, was it in Slack? Yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean, again, as you said, it's optional, so it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, and I think what you did say was that kind of Ruby environment was, you know, from maybe 5 years ago or something.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I can imagine, yeah, you do need a bit of a clean environment for yourself.
yeah, definitely. I just updated the environment and I pointed to a different, newer one, and it worked absolutely fine. But there was an old message in this, I'm sure. We were talking about it before, but it's a good thing that you put it together. There was someone, I remember bringing it up and asking if we could get commit lint in a pre-commit. There you go. For example, can salt lint be run as a pre-commit hook? So it has been discussed in the past. It's just been that time of actually getting on with it. So now that it's there, that's really good. And it does all sorts of hooks. So, you know,
we could even write our own if we so wished.
For specific things, but there's all sorts of hooks. Now, the idea, Javier, is to actually use this in place of our current lint stage. So this PR involves setting it all up here in the actual configuration file. And then in Travis, it replaces all of what we're doing here currently. So the different linters are all run through pre-commit instead. In terms of when we use this in other formulas, because again, I haven't had a chance to check in detail just yet, which is why I wanted to discuss it here. But this will work without me having to think about any of these at all. Like I just put it into the other formulas and it will run straight off the bat. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe so.
Right. So we can just remove these, or should we have a short period of time where we have both?
I wouldn't be against having a short period of time where we run both.
Yeah, because removing it afterwards is easy. Because it's all from the SSF anyway. So should we just keep this section for now and have this running at the same time? And if there are any discrepancies between the two, we can compare and see, okay, we need to change one configuration or the other to see what's going on. Yeah, so if we just maybe leave this section for now.
Yeah,
and then
I can't remember why exactly I stripped all of that out. Oh yeah, the reason was, it doubles the runtime in CI, but
since we have some concurrency anyway, it doubles it. So we're looking at, instead of 1 minute, it's 2 minutes, yeah?
Yeah, or a minute and a half or 140 or something like that, yeah.
I think that's fine for now, meaning we've still got the other 4 runs taking place where the other things are still, it's not all being held up by the lint stage.
They don't run longer than a test kitchen run anyway.
Yeah, so I think we should just keep that in there for the time being. Make sure we're all happy that it's running the way we expect, and use this everywhere if we can as soon as possible. And then once we're happy, we remove these sections and just use the pre-commit instead. Any concerns about that, Javier? That we just use pre-commit to do everything instead of our own? So we match our local linting with our actual linting in Travis.
No, it makes sense. Please show me again, where are you putting all those linters in the pre-commit hooks?
So it's in the pre-commit config.
Yeah, file.
That's it. So it's,
and then once you have pre-commit the package manager installed on your machine, it kind of all of the actual linters and stuff themselves, it installs them itself into like somewhere in the cache directory. So it's all kind of temporary anyway.
Oh, so
on your own local machine. Yeah, so you don't need to set up
a special directory or anything.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I was thinking of any user saying, okay, I want to install this, and what would it imply? I mean, pip install, for example, I install in a special directory, or if you install some gems, I usually use another place to install them other than the regular system. So I was trying to think, what would it mean for a regular user downloading the formula and saying, okay, I will install pre-commit?
Yeah, well, I think the idea is that it is all in a kind of a self-contained place in .cache.
Yeah, I like it more and more.
The thought about the issue about it as well is no one's forced to use it. So you'd have to opt in to actually use the pre-commit on your side. So if people didn't, then it's not going to make a difference for them. They can still use the formulas.
I got that part. My thinking was that many times people do opt in, and when they opt in and the installing things is kind of a pain, they just get disappointed or something like that. So I was trying to think, what would it mean? But if it is as simple as downloading the package and installing it, it sounds like great.
There is a thought though, is how many people are going to opt in? Because we might do all of this and it's good for us, the regular contributors, but if people aren't opting in, then we're still going to end up with the same problem of commit messages not being correct and other lint issues coming up. How do we convince them to opt in? Because it's per formula as well, isn't it? You have to actually opt in for every formula.
It is per formula, yes. I think it's just a question of like messaging, and I think once people realize that this is there, then I would imagine it would kind of become second nature, that you clone a formula and
Run the
you run the
pre-commit and stuff.
script.
I think also actually once we start getting the lint errors in pre-commit format, we can actually say, hey, you can have this locally as well if you just run the install, and it'll do this before you even push it. So perhaps it would encourage people to do it. I mean, more than what we've currently got, because those things aren't available locally just yet. So I suppose
Yeah.
it's still an advantage. One little comment about this section here.
Yeah.
You added this block here. I'd prefer at the moment to keep this up with the first line, because there's nothing mentioned about pre-commit in the how to contribute file. So
Okay.
because this was actually in reference to the commit message formatting. So if you don't mind.
Oh, I see. Right. Yeah. I mean, again, this is, I was kind of expecting some feedback like this, and
Yeah.
rather than, well, I just wrote it so that something was there rather than nothing, basically.
In fact, what we could do would be probably nicer is just have a heading 3, change this to a heading 3 and have that underneath it, and then have a heading 3 for pre-commit specifically underneath this. So if you know what I mean, rather than having that as some bold text, just having that as a heading 3 and this underneath, and then having a pre-commit heading as well, so that we can clearly see there's
Okay.
a section for pre-commit that people can follow. But I think it's a great idea, and it'd be really nice. Let's just overlap it for the time being, so that we're completely comfortable with it, and we ourselves are just using it more and more. I always wanted to do this. So
Yeah.
I'm really grateful you've done it, because I've known about it for a while, just never had the time. So I'm looking forward to this personally. So let's get it out there and see what happens across our formulas. So
Okay.
I think we're happy with
Yeah.
that.
Well, yeah. I only did it because I thought it would be useful for me, but not only, well, yeah, checking the commit messages, and
Yeah.
like I made some changes to some of the Ruby stuff, and yeah, I only became aware that there were issues in CI, and I thought, this is, sometimes I run Rubocop, sometimes I don't, and surely we can
Just have it running every commit.
formalize this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd really be interested if there is a good restructured text linter as well, because like I said, that does come up a lot. There's lots of little formatting errors in many of the PRs, or a large number of them. So it'd be great if we can get one of those in place as well. It shouldn't be too difficult. I mean, I know I saw quite a few here. So there's the backticks, and what other ones do we see? There's a linter here directly for it. So if we could check
There's a linter in PyPy.
Is there? Do you know what it's called?
Restructured text dash lint.
Okay, was it this one here? Was it this one perhaps? Or is that not the one? In any case, if we can get one of those in there, because I don't think it has to be configured for pre-commit. So even if it's in PyPy, if it's not been configured for pre-commit, we won't be able to use it, I don't think. We'd have to have it.
You're right, but there are actually workarounds to that.
Okay, that's even better. If there's a good one then in PyPy and we can get that configured for ourselves,
And
that'd be
then,
great.
yeah, and I suppose the idea is you could always submit these upstream to whatever
Yes.
project and say, well, it would be useful if your repo had this in it. So
Okay.
yeah, it's all a a bit of a work in progress.
Of course, step by step, but this is a big step as it is, and it would be.
RST linter, I see Google shows it as in Firefox documentation, they suggest using it, so probably that's a good one too.
Okay.
And we already have it there.
Excellent. I think we've got a good idea going there. So we're good with that for now, yeah? We can, any more conversation on the pre-commit, or are we happy with that for now?
I'm done.
Okay, good, great stuff. I'll just go back to a couple of those in a minute. Just for information purposes, we've also got our Slack channel bridge to Telegram as well now, because there's a couple of communities out there. Now, I've got a question about that, but I'll do that in meeting 07 when we get to it. And that's standard. Has Baby Gnu, has he joined? Is he in yet? I think he's saying he might just join in a minute.
Just the three of us.
Okay. Javier, just briefly, we were we've got some, David's put some Windows testing on a couple of formulas. Do you think it's worth having this in the template formula as well, just in case someone's using it, using a formula for Windows, putting that configuration in the template formula? Any thoughts?
Yeah, it makes sense. Using
Okay.
chocolate, right?
It's not chocolate. No. How are you doing it, David?
No, using a WinRepo, which is built into Salt.
Oh, I saw a couple of formulas mentioning chocolate
Was there?
too.
I didn't notice those. Let's have a look. But those could be tested as well, theoretically, right?
Yes.
Yeah, those are.
Whoops. I searched in the wrong place.
Oh, I don't know where I saw it.
Oh, no, it was packages formula, wasn't it?
Oh, sorry.
I
Oh,
didn't
yeah,
have it
the
here.
package formula has it.
Right, there's packages formula. Yeah, it's only the packages formula. But there's another
Okay.
place we could obviously, yeah, this one would be good. You see, David, this one would be a
Right.
good candidate for it because it's supposed to handle Windows. And
Yep.
Right.
yeah,
Okay.
would it be able to handle that? Do you think?
Yes. Well, I can't see why not, because all it does is run a converge on the local on that machine which is running in CI. The only thing is if there's a kind of a dependency that Chocolatey needs, which I wouldn't be surprised. But I mentioned this before. The actual kind of image that runs for Windows in GitHub Actions is very well spec'd, and there's tons of things
So it
already
should have
installed.
it probably has
So I
everything
wouldn't be
anyway
surprised if maybe Chocolatey is already
in place.
installed as a dependency anyway.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's worth having in the packages formula, definitely, because it'd be good to test it there, this chocolatey and stuff. That'd be, and in fact, we actually spoke about that, I think, in this PR, if I remember correctly. Let's have a look at the, there's the PR. Yep, and I remember pulling you into the conversation as well.
That was in the early days when I
yeah,
don't
there you
think
go.
there was, I hadn't worked out a
Yeah.
suitable method.
Yeah, see, we was talking about app there and other ideas. So this would be a ripe formula for that as well. So if we had a third one there, and David was also mentioning he's got 3000 and 3001 Windows testing taking place. In fact, you know what? I'll bring that back up when I talk about the point that me and Javier, remember that point I was discussing about the master images only? I want to talk about it here in a minute. You know where I was saying, can we just move everything to master rather than having all these different things in the matrix?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can bring that up in a minute.
Okay.
This map ginger, I really wanted to talk about if he's not joined at the moment, right? Otherwise, I'll just come back to it.
So somebody's joined.
Somebody's joined. Is
I'm
that
not sure who.
DAD.
DAD.
hello? Is that Daniel? Can you just ask in the chat? Because if it's Daniel, we'll come back to that in a minute. Let's just move forward for now.
Okay, it is Daniel. He says I have a microphone issue, so he's in chat.
Okay, he's in chat. Okay, in that case, well, he hopefully will be able to chat us through some of this. But Daniel managed to finish the map.ginger changes in the libvirt formula, and he's put in a ton of work into this even before this stage that we just went through now, where he's got this ready. And personally, I am using this locally with slight customizations, and I really, think it's a really useful improvement where we have this. Let's have a look at the file. So not libtofs, that's basic. We don't need to worry about that. It's the map ginger.
Hello.
Hi. How are you?
Fine.
Excellent. Thanks for getting this in, for finishing this off.
Well, I did just integrate what your commits, your own commits, actually, after
Yes.
testing it through Salt SSH.
Yes. Now, actually using this, David and Javier, Have you been able to look behind this, the template formula PR we discussed this in, where we're proposing this version 4? How familiar are you with it? So me and Daniel can talk at the right level here.
I
No.
kind of I know about it, and I know what it kind of intends to do, but I haven't used it myself. I know what the intention is
neither do
behind
I.
it.
Right. Daniel, do you want to explain, or shall I just go through a few points?
Okay, the idea behind that map Jinja is to completely let me try again. Yes, the idea is to put parameters in dedicated directories and to be highly configurable and to get yes, you know, instead of having static files with everything in them, you have one default, and after that you have per grain. Yes, thank you. At
Yeah,
least
I'll try and keep
the
up
code,
with you. Yeah.
yeah, the code is explaining itself. So it's easy to add and to manage your own local family OS or whatever. Actually, personally, I always define a new directory, which is a domain, because you know I want to define parameters per domain. So at the same level as OS family, OS finger, etc., I have a domain directory in which I manage per domain parameters and several others. So we can go up to the million ID.
Yeah.
And each level overrides the press. Yes.
Just to jump in, just 1 minute. I actually use ID here. So just to be clear, it's any grain you like, and if you want to have configuration files for any level of your, so like Baby Gnu was saying, he's got domain. I use ID quite a lot, and what that does is you can then configure down to the individual minions. So you just supply YAML files per any level you like, and it merges it all in together. So Karen, Daniel, I was just saying, domain is one. I like to use ID as well, and it's, you know, that's been one of the main points I've enjoyed about this.
Yes,
it's pretty much like a pillar stack, but on the formula.
Pillars in the file system, almost, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's
but
definitely the idea.
Yeah. Okay. So you put all these parameters in under the pillar directory or something like that?
No, directly in the file system.
No. Yeah. Personally, for example, I'm using GitFS when I'm not using Salt.sh. And so I have several layers. Okay, I use GitFS at the last one, and I'm using rootfs just to provide my own parameters. So my own parameters always come first, and then
the formulas parameters, yeah.
Yes, then the formulas parameters. It was described at least in one ticket or in the working group. And you don't necessarily need use grains for this, because in the, can you show the map, Jinja?
Yes. There we are. Yep.
Yes, because at one level you can, it's, if the map Jinja, if it's not really a grain, if what you configure is not a grain, it's used directly as a string.
Oh yeah. Now where is that?
I don't remember where it is.
Okay, so 1 second. It's one of these.
Can you look for literal?
For what? Sorry, literal. Okay.
Literal, yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, this part over here. Right. Is that the part?
Yeah, definitely. So if you put in map sources, there is a configuration key to configure the map Jinja itself. And if you put something that is not solved as a grain, or actually a config.get, because we use config get and not grains get. So the directory we saw, OS family, etc., is whatever is searchable through config get, not only grains. So it can be minion configuration, master configuration, or whatever. And the idea is to mimic what is done with pillar stack and to avoid as much as possible using pillars, which could be a little bit too expensive on the master when you have lots of minions.
Okay,
But
so let me see if I can trace this in my mind. When the say that you are using master slave, right? So the minion requests something that is request a formula, and then GitFS also mounts the parameters directory, but all that stays on the master. Is not copied to the minion, or all the parameters directory is copied to the minion too.
When in fact, when the map.jinja is run by your formula, okay, it looks for some kinds of files based on what you configure, like OS family, OS fingers, etc. And the map.jinja will look up the corresponding file in the whatever you configured about your rootfs. Either so if it's in another GitFS somewhere in the GitFS stack, it's fetched from there, or yes, exactly. And I think I could write some documentation about my own setup. Yeah, you see?
I think that would be very useful. Because
agree.
it would help. Because personally, I've used it, so I appreciate it, and I know what you're saying. But I think for others to really get the full idea of it, would be a little bit more documentation would really help with that. So
Yeah.
if you can see here, some of the debug the debug output will show you the sort of steps it's taking, how it's working through the map.jinja. So it's starting by getting the defaults, then it's finding where are we?
It's pulling in the individual files from the rootfs.
So you're setting the sources in a particular order. So you're saying work through the sources in this particular order, you know, and go through and pull out whichever ones you find, and just keep merging further and further, until you basically generate the map. What this does, this is supposed to be, and what I've seen so far, it's fully reverse compatible. So if a person just wants to keep using pillars, that's fine, and it will still work identically. It has to actually work identically. We need to make sure it does. And Daniel, have you found that? Is it working exactly when you've transferred from the pillar to this method? Is it doing the same thing?
Yes, for me, it's doing exactly the same thing. We have some, do you remember the issue about the lookup table, about its use? Yeah. But as we have the two keys config get, can you get up in the map sources?
Yeah.
Oh, you had it in the debug output. You can use it from the debug output. Map source. Yeah, you have OS arch, OS family, OS finger, config get lookup, and config get. So we are merging the lookup and then the whole pillar.
This is the one you mean. Yeah. So you have here. So just to explain, this was a discussion we had in the GitHub discussion section, and it was about, how we merge in, even being able to choose whether we have a lookup merged in or not, because some formulas don't even have a look. So where we have the pillar lookup at the moment. So where we have now is we have the option of how we merge those in as well, in which order, and whether we even merge them in. So this is all configurable for the end user to decide how they want to actually use this, because they may not have many of these things over here. So they just pick the ones they need.
Where do you actually configure that then?
Where do you configure it again? Let me pull it up.
Oh.
Where does it go again? Yeah, I'm just trying to find is it in the pillar? Pillar.example. Where was it again? I've forgotten that part.
Yes, you have the. It's not in the default pillar.
No, it's
actually.
Where was
It-
it?
No,
so
I
it, but
didn't.
it would be in pillar, would it?
No,
Yeah,
it's not in
No.
the configuration about
Or
the sort order, the order of the sources you want to merge, the parameters, you can configure it as a formula author in the default, because as an author you may want to use or not the stack, the lookup, the excuse
okay.
me,
But
the
can a user of the formula configure it as well?
Definitely can. Where was it again? I've just forgotten where it was because I haven't used it for a while, as in configured it for a while. But where do we put that again?
Oh, yes, the configuration about sources, you can put it in default YAML, in pillar, or in the minion configuration. Actually, it's, can you open the map Jinja, please?
Yes, 1 second. So let's go back to here. Let's go to the
In Libret, yes.
Yep.
And we are doing first lookup about the map Jinja itself. So we are loading from defaults the defaults, and
right.
then
So that's
map Jinja configuration. We have a default here, and just after that we are doing config get, yes, at line 37.
37 over here.
So you have all the code here, yeah. So we are loading from the defaults for the formula itself, and then we allow the user to override what is done in any defaults if it's provided by doing a config get map Jinja sources.
Okay.
So it's fully configurable by users. But I think I should write something about how I set it up myself with GitFS, etc., to have a concrete example.
Yeah. But it's just it's step by step. Just allows you to configure each part of the whole process. So none of this would have to be touched afterwards. The idea is once this is working the way we envisage, you won't have to touch map.ginger again. Everything can be done from your config. Everything can be done from config. And the only thing would ever be different between the map.gingers is this very last line. And even that, perhaps we can, was there a plan for how we can even the export from the actual,
yes,
how we can, that we can
yes.
somehow make that consistent as well?
Yes, it was an idea about the blocked task in Taiga. I did some research to be able to define, when we wanted to convert the Jinja to Python.
Yes.
Yes, and unfortunately, it's not working with Salt SSH.
So
but we have an example. I think I made some try.
Did you put it in here or?
I don't remember actually. I'm looking by my own side, but I'm not very performant with two screen, and one of them is not mine. But yes, the idea was the Python with the Python rendering of the map Jinja was to be able to load it and define the top level variable with the name we wanted. So we could have a static, completely the same map Jinja map, actually, again, across all formulas.
Yeah. The only problem I see with that is that a few formulas are exporting multiple variables. So we'd have to work out how to do that. But otherwise, all the rest of this literally should, you can envisage a time when all of this should be able to be the same. It's just the very last line at the moment, which would be specific to formulas, the settings that are being exported.
Yeah.
So in terms of moving forward with this, Javier and David, are you saying that a bit more documentation explaining how to actually use this is needed, or how can we take this to the next step?
Documentation for sure. It would be nice to see an example. I kind of get the idea, but I'm sure that example would make it much clearer. And the other thing I'm thinking about is perhaps we can set all this into a macro and MapShinsha include the macro? So people can opt in or opt out of using it?
Daniel?
MapShinsha would end up in 2 lines, probably 2-3 lines.
Sorry, I was not. Can you repeat, please?
No, I mean, if we set all this into a macro and we include it in MapShinsha, like is the libaldfs and all those macros that we have in different files. So we include it in this Shinsha, in MapShinsha, and if people don't want to use this setup, they can use the old setup, at least until this adopted across all the formulas or something like that. Or what do you think?
Daniel, what do you think?
Actually, you can use that MapShinsha in any formula using MapShinsha, just setting the last line, because I did a little script to convert the maps, the actual OS something map.yaml we have in other formula, to convert them easily in parameters. It's not actually committed somewhere.
It's over here.
It's only
it's over here where we. Yeah.
There was a guest. I had a guest on this.
Yeah. Now, why in the world is that not loading up? It's a massive. Right. It's going to be hidden because it's such a long conversation. It'll be here somewhere. So Javier, you're saying sort of being able to select a map.ginger to use, basically either use the new one or the old one. Is that what you're saying? This is it here.
Yeah, my thinking is people coming to use formulas at the moment. Using the template is more complex than the usual documentation in Solid, right? So we are getting a whole framework where getting in is not that easy. If you go to solve the documentation, MapShinsha is kind of a trivial file with 2-3 lines, and this is a big rewrite of it, which is okay. I really like it, but the point is newcomers will probably find it a lot of changes.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Ideally, should people be ever touching the map?
No.
So that's because what I've actually found is the hardest PR or some of the most difficult PRs I've had to actually review are those that touch the map in the first place, because I have no idea what the implications are going to be, you know, of that one change in the map sometimes, you know, and I feel like the more we can take the map out of the equation, so it does its job and we know exactly how it works and it does, then I can stop worrying about the map. It does what it does and I can just concentrate on configuration instead. That's what I see as one of the advantages to this.
You know, I wouldn't be surprised if this could be incorporated into a module in Salt itself.
Yeah, it's just about actually getting. Actually, no, Daniel, you had a bit of a attempt at that, wasn't it? Daniel, have we lost him?
He's still here.
Again, I mean, I think
I kind of yeah. I mean, maybe a little bit down the road, not obviously like next week or next month, but at some point, if we're happy with how this structure works, I'm pretty sure, from my understanding of
it's definitely
modules.
A lot more, just looking at it, people aren't going to touch this because it's going to be like, I don't know what's going on. But in a way, that's the point. The point is to take people away from the
If it lets people do what they want with a formula, then yeah, I can't. And it's as flexible as I believe it is. Then yeah, people won't need to touch it.
I mean, take the packages formula. I'm using it personally with a slight customization with the packages formula, and it's, you know, it completely different. The way I use the formula now is so much easier. And even from the whole angle of how I used to use pillar stack and how I use this, it's just so much easier just to have each minion with its ID with its own set of packages already defined, and I don't have to think anymore about, okay, how do I merge this all in? I just make another YAML file for each minion in the in the parameters ID folder, and I'm done. And I like that. I like the fact that I don't have to think, is the map going to do what it's supposed to do? I just put in another YAML file and everything's configured. Do you get the? That's I'd really like to push this. I know there's been a lot of concerns about this method and it's too complex and does too much, and maybe pillars are fine, but if this still works for pillars, fine, and it doesn't hold anyone up, I'd really like to see this start moving forward. But again, documentation I think is the main thing. If Daniel can provide that, how his use case in detail, because he's probably used it much more extensively than I have. That would
I'm
be
back.
really. Oh, you're back. Hi.
Yeah, I have some connection troubles.
David was asking about this being a module that could be maybe included into Salt even at some point. Any thoughts about that?
Oh, yes. The idea was to experiment as a outside Jinja, actually, in each formula. And if the community agree, and if it's valuable, it can definitely become a module in Salt itself. But I think it needs to prove so much usefulness.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Before being included.
Yeah. So let's try and move forward with this, Daniel. It would be really nice to see this in a few more formulas, from my angle at least. And if we could start with some formulas where people are comfortable with the idea first. We don't have to maybe go to the template just yet, because that's the big step, but we'll take a few more formulas and put it in there. And with the documentation, hopefully then we can start understanding how it all works.
I will first write some documentation about my own setup, about how I use it with my complete GitFS, rootfs, etc. And then we will see how to convert some formulas.
Right, that's excellent.
Yeah, I like the idea. I use pretty much a lot of pillar stack. I like the idea of not repeating configuration, so I have a real hierarchy there. So moving it to this would be a nice thing to have.
And the good thing is you can keep pillar stack for the secrets. It handles that as well. It does all of it.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. The idea of being able to reproduce the stack YAML configuration of pillar stack in this Map Ninja setup. So I move everything I already have, my hierarchy of of configurations. It would be great, and just keep pillar stack for the secrets.
There is one thing, some see it as an advantage, some see it as a disadvantage, is that this method at the moment splits it into many files. I know that Dax didn't like the idea of that there's so many different files that you end up with. I personally don't mind that, because I like having smaller blocks to look through. But some people are saying when you're merging across, many different grains and you've got lots and lots of files, that brings in an element of confusion. You get the point I'm making, or?
Yeah. I have a lot of files. I have a hierarchy split on four. I have actually 2 or 3 levels that they are looped. So I have a general setup using OS family, OS application, customer in what case, and minion in the last place. And then I loop again with the same idea for a specific customer. So I have a lot of small files.
A lot of splitting anyway.
Yeah. So, but the idea is to keep them dry. So when I set up a general parameter for all my setups, for example, I just set it up in all, and that's it.
Yeah.
And in this case,
it can be done here as well. I mean, you got the default YAML anyway, and you can have other custom grains as well if you like, where you put the common things in a custom grain, and then you can have the same thing again in the parameters. So it's all in the file system, and it works. And there's no chicken and egg problem either, because with some of the other things we've tried, you have to do one run to actually populate the sources, and then a second run will actually use the sources. That was one of the things we had with, what was it? The SDB YAML. The SDB YAML setup, it wasn't working immediately. Whereas this, as soon as you put it in the file system, it's accessible. It works like how we are used to with the pillars.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
I like the idea.
We've run out of time. Can I just point at the one or two things maybe we can look at in the following sprint rather than talk about things in detail? Is that okay? Or how are we for time basically?
It's okay.
You guys okay for about say 10 minutes or so?
Yeah,
10 minutes is fine.
Yeah, it's okay.
For me.
Okay, let's just quickly skip through this. Last time we were talking about sponsors, and we've been given the go-ahead for that. The issue is how is anyone willing to sort of, David, would you be willing to maybe look into that idea of the account that we'd need to have behind it so we can actually start the application? Would you mind doing that? Because I know I'm not going to get much time at the moment to look at this.
I can do.
Yeah, that'd be great. Anyone know anything about opencollective.com? Because I noticed that in the last few days as well. And it's quite interesting where you can, set up different levels of. Anyone have any experience with this? So you can set up different organizations and get different types of sponsorship, and just encourage people to get involved with your projects and your formulas and stuff and your repos. No experience with that. Anyway, that's another one I think is worth looking at as an idea of how we can start generating more interest and more involvement in our formulas as well. But that's something, if anyone wants to have a look at, that'd be good to get some feedback on that. Documentation, Daniel, that idea of the usage is really, really good. So it's definitely something we want. It's just obviously whenever you get a chance to maybe finish that example.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not using too much Nginx formula, and
Why not
I
do
need
it for
a little bit.
How about the libvirt? Why not do it for the libvirt formula?
Yeah, well, I didn't spend too much time on this actually, as you have found it. I think I don't know if I will have so much time about it from now.
Okay,
actually.
No problem. That's not a problem. We'll do it afterwards. Any luck with any of those organizations, David?
I haven't made any further contacts, to be honest, but I will do before next meeting.
Okay, I'll leave it there. I'll leave it there for that. I did want to ask about this. We'll leave it for now. No hurry. Because just very generally, the 3001 images are in place, the pre-salted images, but hardly any formulas are using it. What I'm finding is updating the matrices now with 2017, 2018, and having to remove those and put new ones. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. You have to go through and run them all in Travis. And what I was saying to Javier, just really briefly, we don't have to discuss this now, is it would be so much easier now just to run everything on the master image and have those other pre-salted images for, say, local testing or for specific bug testing. So if there's a bug that comes in and it says it's in 3001, we can spin up 3001 and test it. But if everything's just on master, it will just run from now on. And we've at least got testing of some sort running on each of our formulas, but we don't have to worry about upgrading the matrix every single time there's a new release of Salt. You get the rough idea, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, my concern with that is that master is not the current Salt people is using.
I think my idea is more about development, is that the development of the formulas is still going to work in the newest releases of Salt. I know what you're saying. What you're saying is actually correct and is the ideal. What I'm saying is more so is from two angles. One, we don't have the effort to keep the matrices updated. And two, at least if we're testing it with the latest Salt, we know it's still going to work when new Salt version comes out. It's not ideal. It's just more of a, how can I put it? Just making do with the situation we're in.
Yeah,
Okay.
I get the point. I'm trying to think if we have a chance of, for example, make the Travis YAML file to say we keep in somewhere a small gist file with the versions being current, previous, old, with the reference to the Salt number or Salt version.
It's not even that heavy. What I found is even the same platform, sometimes fails when you just bump the start version. I mean, there's silly little things that happen, and it's only when you run them that you see there's some issue that takes place that suddenly it doesn't start working. So I can't just go through, for example, and just bump all the numbers by one, because it just doesn't work. If it did, I'd do that. We need more thought. Yeah, go on.
What I was going to say on this topic is, what about, because we've got code owners in place, to some degree, you know, if you've agreed to become a code owner, then I guess one needs to take a bit of responsibility for their own formula. So when this point comes where we have a new release, why don't we open an issue in every formula? Basically, the issue saying this formula needs to be updated to the new release, and then it's up to the code owner to you know, resolve that issue. Because yeah, it's not scalable that this is somehow your responsibility, Imran, as one person. It's just not scalable. So
I think the main thing, just jumping in there, is it's just about the reality on the ground. And that is, if the code owners can just take care of the issues and the PRs coming in, they're doing a fantastic job. And to ask them to do the CI on top of that is, it's good if they can, but I've just found, you know, it's just, to be honest with you, my whole thing about the code owners was, can these formulas be maintained? The issues, the PRs coming in, because reviewing that as well on top of all the other things we're doing is a bit too much to ask from us. And some of the code owners have really responded, and you're seeing some activity now where they're just taking care of the issues and the PRs, and that's enough. So I think the CI is still going to stay in our hands, just in the sense that, because we're the ones who put it together, and this is built on all the work you guys have done, and I've just kind of wrapped it up into a bundle that can be, you know, replicated. But that work is actually quite hard, I think, for others to think about. I'm not saying you're wrong. That would be ideal again, but they only have so much time, and if they can just deal with the issues and PRs, they're doing a great job.
okay, fair enough.
What I was thinking about was more in the lines of the SALT image builder, saying, okay, we keep a record of the 3 versions of SALT we want to maintain somewhere. And then we have on the formulas, we have a Travis run every week or whatever against those, changing the Travis YAML file to run against those versions. If one of them fails, that's okay. So you don't have to upgrade them every time. It's against a file running with a cron, and we just get a report of the one that fails, and that would automate the upgrade, because we just need to change a file, and all the formulas will do the test weekly against those versions.
Okay, so for example, now I'm doing that against master every week, triggering that from the SSF formula, and it takes about 12 hours for the formulas to run just on the master. If I just pull up Zulip for 1 second, let's have a look at this. And this is, why does it ask me for this? Let's quickly jump in here. And so if we look at, say, week 27, what happened? You see, you know, I trigger it at, say, 2 o'clock, and it doesn't finish till midnight, going through all the formulas, you know, after midnight. And that's just on the masters. So it's already, you know, it takes a significant period of time. So if we was running 3 versions in there, it's just going and looking back through that to see which ones have passed. In fact, I have to look through them even just because, you know, one of them needs to be restarted here and there, you know, because there's something that's failed, but it's not an actual formula problem. It's just the CI itself is, you know, falling down. So it's already a lot of effort just with the master, and that's automated, almost semi-automated. So we don't have to make a decision now. I just wanted to throw it out there as a thought. We can, you know, still consider how to do this, but that's something I'd like to, any ideas about that? And, you know, please just chuck an idea in the ticket or something so we can keep that discussion going. We don't have to do it, but we could just leave things as they are. But then some of the formulas are beginning to fail now because the older images aren't working. Something to think about. Stacker, we can't do much at the moment. TMAP, we're waiting for that to be updated. Pre-commit, how to propagate this. And I asked David earlier when we was talking, it sounds like I can just, you know, take the pre-commit files and actually just use the same ones across all formulas. Is that correct? Yeah, David, just confirming.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, I'll do that 1 or 2 formulas hopefully soon, and after we merge the template formula one and see how
Okay.
that runs. The inconsistencies of that, we'll talk about that another time. Where are we? Oh, now apparently we can. Javier, you know, I mentioned that David mentioned to me that we can get gold tier for our GitLab. You know, I mentioned it, I think it was yesterday, was it, or the day before?
Yeah, yesterday should have been.
Yeah. So, Javier, are you still there?
Yeah, here.
Would you do you think you'd get a chance to be able to just to follow through with that article that we were linked to, and see whether we can do that with our GitLab?
Yeah.
If you get a chance, because but it's just there because now we should be able to manage this. If we get the gold tier, we'll be able to mirror both ways, and then we can start moving our formulas into GitLab. If you can't, it's not a problem. I'm just asking if because obviously you know you helped set it up, and if you get a chance, that would be helpful.
I think that I will have time.
That'd be really helpful if you can. If you can't, you know, we'll look at it in the following meeting.
Okay.
Briefly here, you know, we spoke about how to advertise our other locations where our chat is available, so that people. I'd like to see, because we get pull requests coming in from people, but there's been no discussion beforehand, and sometimes they maybe bite off more than they can chew. So what I was thinking is one of the places is it in here. You can only see it in the actual raw. Is we're mentioning here. I don't know how much people actually see this, but maybe making more of a big message saying, you know, these are the channels where you can discuss with us, you know, whether it's in Slack, Gitter, IRC, Telegram, and we make that a bigger thing in our actual issue templates and PR templates, and put that near the top somewhere so that they can see, have a discussion here first. Would that be a useful place to put that, do you think? Do you get the idea?
Mm-hmm.
And that's one
It
place I
just
can
needs
see.
to stand out a bit more.
Yeah, because at the moment it's not loud enough. But I was thinking this would be at least one place where we can improve this, so that people can actually talk to us rather than maybe spend a lot of time doing something. And again, it's there, but it's not very clear, I think. So we can just advertise all the channels we're available on, so they can have a discussion first, maybe before tackling a big PR.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so that's something I can look at. These will have to be done another time. This formulas. I think that's it. There's nothing else new. Nothing else new. So 2 weeks time, I think, is our next meeting.
Yeah.
Any other last issues?
Not from me.
No.
No.
All right. Brilliant.
Here.
Thanks for joining, guys. It was nicer than just having a one-to-one conversation. It's good to have a few
Yeah.
more people involved. Thanks a lot. So we'll catch up in 2 weeks then.
See you
Okay.
later.
All right.
Stay
Thank you.
safe.
Yeah,
Bye,
okay, you
guys.
too. Bye-bye.